All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jazziz Last Call. We are kicking off a new chapter in the Jazziz Last Call story, coming to you live tonight and every night moving forward at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I am your host, Brian Zimmerman, executive editor of Jazziz Magazine, and it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us tonight, watching on Jazziz Last Call or listening on the Jazziz Backstage podcast. Our guest tonight is the amazing Jamison Ross, a very talented drummer and vocalist whose debut album, Jamison, was nominated for a Grammy for Best Jazz Vocal Album. Prior to that, in 2012, he won the Thelonious Monk International Jazz Competition on drums. So the guy can really do it all. Anyway, he is here. It is last call. So what do you say we go one more round with Jamison Ross? Jamison, are you there, man?
I'm here, man. What's going on?
Hello, sir. Pleasure to have you, man. Times are crazy, but it is nice to be spending an evening with you, man. Thanks for being here. As our viewers know, as our longtime viewers know, the first thing we do on this show is a toast. We raise a glass. We drink to someone, something, some place, some time. So, Jamison, who, what, where, when, why are we drinking? With this glass?
I like that.
Little trademark. Yeah.
Well, I think what we are drinking to is health, safety, and hope. You know what I'm saying?
I love that, man. Cheers to that.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, Jamison came prepared for our first live show.
It's 8:30. It's after 8, man. You know.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Well, Jamison, first of all, how are you doing, man? It's time, like we said, times are tough, especially for musicians. How have you been? Where are you hanging out? Have you watched Hamilton yet? I mean, what's going on?
I watched Hamilton last night, actually, at a friend's house.
Yes.
His wife, one of my close married friends, she wanted to watch it, and we cut it on. We got through like the first hour, and then we said, you know what, let's put a pause to it. We'll come back to it. You know, it's kind of long, but I'm fine, man. I'm here in Jacksonville, Florida, my hometown. I reside in New Orleans, Louisiana, and but I came to see my mom because I haven't seen my family in a while, and I'm going to go down to Tampa to see my in-laws, and so I'm just enjoying some time with family, and trying to connect with them, and try to find some kind of solace inside of this, break that we have.
That's exactly right. A silver lining somewhere in there, man.
Yeah,
because it's like, you got to think that this time of reflection, this little pause that we all have, will affect the music going forward. A lot of self-reflection, a lot of introspection, a lot of time to sit. And yeah, man. So I know you've been keeping busy, doing a lot of live streams, doing some playing. So
yeah,
it's healthy.
It's funny, man, because like this is a new normal for us, and I feel like, instead of getting emails about a tour or about, a show, you get an email about a Zoom call or a meeting or some type of, live. And so it's like, it's an adjustment, to be honest, just to be transparent, because where we get our inspiration from is performing music, it's playing music, it's swinging, it's grooving, it's being in the fire, the line of battle. And so when you don't have that anymore, you got to find other ways to be creative. And so that's been a challenge, but also something that I've tried to take on, as best possible.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And hey, Jamison, listen, before we get into the thick of things, I just want to remind people watching, if you like what you're watching, if you like what you've been watching on the Jazz Last Call, share, spread the word, let people know what's going on. And also feel free to write in, say hello, let us know, let Jamison know where you're watching from. We'll show your comments on screen. And if you have a question for Jamison too, go ahead and ask it. We'll try to get to it on air by the end of the show. Jamison, man, like I said in the intro, singer and drummer. Equally good at both. And that's rarefied air, man, especially in jazz. I feel like I could count on one hand the number of singing drummers in jazz. And really maybe only, in addition to you, one finger. I can think of Grady Tate. But who else really is a singing drummer in jazz?
Well, there's not a lot. There's in jazz, you have Grady Tate, of course. You also have like just to go a little bit more recent, there's other drummers who sing as well as play the drums, but there's not very many drummers that do both at the same time. I don't actually think there's one who would do both. In New Orleans, which is where I reside, there's a ongoing tradition of singing drummers that do it from a place of soul and a place of an invigorating kind of energy. Herlin Riley and Shannon Powell, but to actually declare as a vocalist, you know, and actually declare the concept, which I like to call rhythm and melody, and to intertwine the two, you know. Just as a piano player, like a Donny Hathaway would sing and play, Stevie would sing and play. I like to say, and not to put my name in the same category as Stevie and Donny, but Jamison Ross sings and plays. It's not just about the drums, even though. And so it's been a journey. It's been a real journey for me because it's like there's not a lot of information out inside the jazz idiom. There's other, you know, so.
Yeah, no, totally. And Terry Lynn Carrington, we could throw her name in there too, as someone, you know, a drummer who also sings. But doing it at the same time seems impossibly hard because for anyone who's never played drums, it requires every brain cell, every limb, so much focused attention. I could hardly, you know, like chew gum and play drums at the same time. So to do what you do, to play and, you know, sing as well as it's incredibly hard. Now you do see it to some extent more in rock, which I think we were going, you know, your Don Henley.
That's where I was headed.
And maybe that could have something to do with the fact that, you know, you're a little more dug into a groove there. You know, with jazz, especially, you got to be so attuned to everything else going on.
It's the idea of improvisation. You know, jazz improvisation is one of the main characteristics of our music. And so when you deal with improv and a level of understanding concepts like the blues, swing, some of the core elements of our music, the interpretation of you know, the conversation that takes place on the bandstand. That when you put singing and playing the drums at the same time inside of that context, it becomes what I call an endless amount of possibilities that you have to actually navigate. And so physically there's something you have to overcome, which is a breathing thing that comes with the drums. Separately comes with the voice. There's also just a vocabulary thing. You know, I'm not a jazz vocalist per se. You know, I come from the soul tradition of the great singers, you know, the same tradition of the Sam Cookes and the Aretha Franklins and the Marvin Gayes. I come from the same tradition, and just being real, you know, as a drummer, I come from a tradition of playing gospel music and then actually having a jazz perspective and studying and having a love for the idiom of jazz. That becomes a marriage that, you know, can be sometimes difficult.
It is, man. And I know I see what you're saying because in your voice I do hear the Sam Cooke, absolutely, the Otis Redding. Not to say that, you know, you can't hear that Nat King Cole wasn't an influence or Frank wasn't an influence, but definitely grounded in that soul R&B tradition. You strike me as a dude who was like playing drums in the crib. I could just see little Jameson in the crib, like, you know, like, was it that early on?
It was. I got my first drum set. I can't even remember the age, man, because I got a white Mapex kit. And for all my drummers out there, y'all know what I'm talking about. I had a 22-inch bass drum, 10, 12, 16. And my dad actually thought that I was too young to get it. My grandfather bought it for me. And my grandfather just was, you know, he was a proud grandfather that was just very adamant about making sure his grandson had everything he wanted. I was the first grandchild, you know, and so, you know, they were just excited. You know what I mean? So my mom, though, I mean, my dad thought it was early, but I had my first real kit, young kid, maybe, I had to be maybe 5 or 6 years old. And I mean, like, you know, most people get the plastic kits from Walmart, like the little first stack kits, you know?
Yeah, I got one of those in the house here, for my daughter.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like,
you know, but my grandfather went out and, you know what I'm saying? So
that's right. Very cool, man. Very cool. You know, I want to, obviously, a lot of career milestones mixed in afterwards, including you and I playing together at the great Florida All-State Jazz Band in 2005 to 2006. Our careers went in very different paths, you know, but hey, I feel like all good. I'm absorbing some of your fame through osmosis. No, but another huge thing to come afterwards was the Thelonious Monk International Jazz Drum Competition. And again, for people who don't know, this is kind of like an Olympic event for jazz musicians. So how does it work? You're like narrowed down from a field of drummers, because I know the finals of the Thelonious Monk Jazz Competition, it's 3 drummers on stage, you know, being judged by some of the best drummers in the world. But before you get there, what's the process like to reach that level?
You know, you get basically you get, you know, they send out a big, you know, what I call a PSA, a public service announcement, and they let you know that the Monk competition is going to be for drums. They let me know that. They change the instrument every year.
Right.
And so this particular year, they hadn't did drums in 20 years. Long story short, my wife convinced me to send in a tape, and I wasn't going to do it at first because honestly, man, you know, I'm not a competitive person. I just never like to put myself in those kind of environments. But let's be real, the Monk competition is a competition. It's you have to compete to get the award. And and so long story short, I did it. I got all the way to I got chosen as the top 15 out of a pool of thousands of drummers. Thank you, Shuba Man.
Baba Man, yeah.
Baba Man, I love it.
What's up, man?
Yeah, so I got there. I got picked, select out of the 5,000 drummers or something like that. Yeah, next thing you know, they chose 15. The 15, you play 15-minute sets, one 15-minute set apiece, and then they choose the top 3. It goes pretty quick. And so I got to the top 3, and man, lo and behold, they called my name as first place. Myself, Justin Brown, Colin Stranahan. I still remember these guys because I still talk to them. And I still know them, you know, to this day. So
well, and you were, I mean, you were like
close,
20 years old. You were like 20 years old when you won that competition.
23.
23. Yeah. So you had been on the road a little bit with Carmen Lundy by that point, right? Okay, so
but I wasn't in New York.
Not in New York, right? I was going to ask, was it a little nerve-wracking to be on that stage? You look out in the audience, who's there with their notepads, you know, in the judging section? Who was out there?
Man, I love you, Brian. Bro, this is okay. That's exactly what it was like. I was a guy, you know, I'm like the guy, the black sheep, you know, the one who comes along that you don't really know. Right. At least that's how I felt. I can't say that that was the case, but I felt that way because I wasn't in New York and I had aspirations to be in New York, but my path took me to New Orleans. Right. I was married. I was on the verge of having an addition to my family, my daughter. It was just like a very different path for me as a jazz musician. And so for me, when I got to the Monk competition, man, for me to work my way all the way through, you know, the guys who were in what I call the Mecca of the music, it felt good. It felt like, okay, you know what? Maybe I am doing something right. Maybe I am approaching this music that we kind of sometimes guard with a shield. Yeah. You know, I'm approaching it right. And so I get all the way there, man. Long story short, I win. Ben Riley's the judge. Wow. You got Roy Haynes, Jimmy Cobb, Vinny Colaiuta. You had Brian Blade, Carl. I mean, it was amazing, man. And for me to be in that space and be myself, I can't say I played my best drums. I just tried to be as authentic as possible.
Well, I remember reading about this thing when it happened and you winning again, because I knew you. I was obviously rooting for you. But one of the things the judges really loved about you was just like the clarity of your style, you know, the accuracy of the style. It was no frills, there was nothing fancy. It was just like groove. And so I'm curious about the drummers you were listening to early on that kind of helped shape that sound. And by the way, our producer, Jeff, wanted me to ask, you know, people watching, if you want to name your favorite singing drummer from any genre, feel free to write in and to remind Jamison and I of some other singing drummers out there. But go ahead and write in. But anyway, Jamison. So yeah, who were kind of like the drummers of your formative years?
For me, growing up in just church with my grandfather being a pastor, I checked out a lot of Calvin Rogers at the beginning. And I checked out, you know, Calvin Napper. You know, I was very gospel oriented. And then when I got into jazz at about 10, 11 years old, my first introduction was Philly Joe Jones. Okay. Anthony Cobb. This more serious I got more in depth, and I got to college, Art Taylor, Kenny Clark, and I went through the whole lineage into now, to the point now, some of my guys that I pull from the most are probably be like Billy Higgins. I've been back into Jimmy Cobb lately, man, because Jimmy Cobb. We lost him.
Power to Jimmy Cobb. Yes.
Oh, bro. And he was special. And he might even be my spirit drummer. You know, sometimes I feel like it goes back and forth, you know, between who I think, you know, are the people who influence me the most. But Billy Higgins had the concept of groove where he would mesh and play with different soloists in a certain kind of organic way. He would be very giving. Yeah. You know, he would give of his time to support the other players' time. And so, you know, I like clarity of sound, you know. And so, to be honest, at this point, if I had to pick two, I'd pick Billy Higgins and I'd pick Bernard Purdie.
Oh, Bernard Purdie, man, the shuffle. The Purdie shuffle, man. Yeah. Oh, he was a legend. Yeah. And I could hear that.
He is.
I could hear that because you incorporate all sorts of stuff on your debut album, man, and we can get to that. Part of winning the Thelonious Monk competition is that you are awarded a record deal with Concord Jazz. You get to release a label under Concord Jazz. And this is when I imagine the label came to you thinking, all right, we're going to do a drummer-led jazz album. And you say, well, actually, I kind of do this singing thing, and I'd like to make this a vocal album. Was that how it went down?
That's exactly how it went down.
How'd they react to that?
Like, seriously, like, they did not react. They were not pretty fond of that, actually. That's the point. So I literally said, you know, after talking to all the big wigs, you know, I say it like that because sometimes we think that record labels are like these daunting characters of people. Man, they're people. Right. Long story short, when you get on a conversation with someone and you talk about an album, I didn't know what I wanted to do as a drummer. I saw myself bigger than that because of the way I heard the music. I've always approached the music with a certain kind of melodic, kind of intuitive sense about what was taking place overall. Long story short, man, I told Chris, man, I think I want to sing. And it got to the point where Chris Dunn, who's my A&R guy, who is a good friend of mine, it pushed the limits. He even pushed even harder. It was like, okay, how many? Like a whole album singing, you know, 2 songs, you know what I mean? Right. And it got to the point where I presented him easily with what my album would sound like if I was singing and playing the drums. Okay. And immediately he was like, I'm sold, you know? He did make me, in order to prove it to all the people above, you know how this go, I did a whole demo tape, which took me some time to do. I look back on it, sometimes I think it was worth it. Sometimes I think it was not, a waste of my time. But I did a demo tape where I sung and played the drums of what some of the arrangements that I wanted to do with my band. And they were sold. They did it. I don't think they really knew exactly what they were getting into, honestly, because if I was a businessman and I had an artist that was coming, you know, to my label, I would be nervous. But I think they understood that, you know, I had a vision. I knew what I wanted to do, you know?
Well, and you absolutely did know.
Long story short, the record comes out. Yeah, long story short.
And was nominated for a Grammy, man.
And it gets a Grammy nomination.
That's right.
Bingo.
That's right. So you obviously knew where you were headed. And yeah, because your voice, I recall a moment. I recall a moment at the Concord Jazz Festival a couple years ago. You were there, you were singing with the Basie Band, right? And you know, basically, it was a tribute to Ella Fitzgerald, I think. They brought you out. Here's a young drummer, Jamison Ross. You get behind the kit. People are just kind of, you know, on their phones. Jamison Ross, I don't really know that name. They're bringing a drummer out, whatever, you know, talking. Tune starts. You start singing. And it was like people's heads, it was like a magnet, automatically snapped, jaws on the floor. They were like amazed by what was coming out of your mouth, man, and just how good your voice was. And I think that's what that moment was for a lot of us when you dropped Jamison and showed off your vocal talent. You've got that rendition of Bye Bye Blues you do is just heartbreakingly good. I mean, you got a voice that just goes directly to the soul, man. And I've never heard a version of a song like that. You've also, it was a great album. John Batista's on that album.
Yeah, it's my brother, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So how'd you meet him?
Well, man, I mean, he's a part of really what gave me the confidence to sing and play drums. Yeah. You know, I was on tour with him for a couple years before he joined the Stephen Colbert. He did a whole band called the Stay Human Social Music.
Right.
tour.
Oh, yeah.
We went around, and I was a part of that band, but I wasn't playing drums. I was playing keyboards, production. I was singing. I was doing quite a few things.
Wow.
With that.
Okay.
And so if you ever look back and see some of those footages, you'll see this guy that has this huge station.
Yeah.
And I'm like doing a bunch of different things. But John, I appreciate him for that time because it gave me the confidence to see a little bit bigger than sometimes we see inside of our jazz minds. You know, sometimes we see the music based on the way we're taught, which is to, you know, study and follow the rules. But to be able to take this thing further means to honor who you are as a musician and what your influence is and grow from there with what I call the understanding of the lineage and make something out of it. And Bat, my time with Bat, I call him Bat, but John Baptiste, my time with John, it kind of gave me that liberty, that freedom. And so he came on board with me to do that album. He did My One and Only Love, that arrangement. And honestly, if I would have had my way, I would have had him just do the whole album with me. But, you know, I think it worked out perfectly. You know what I'm saying?
Totally, man. And I've appeared on The Tonight Show, right? You've been?
No, I haven't been yet.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't been.
John
We've
Batiste,
tried.
if you're listening, man, let's get Jamison on The Tonight Show. Yeah, no, it was a great album. It's so unique. Your voice was it was not like any other jazz album that came out that year, or any other jazz vocal album that came out that year. There was this awesome slide guitar kind of country vibe on it. Obviously, you go heavy with the blues. With it's a Buddy Guy tune you do, right?
Buddy Guy. Muddy Waters.
Muddy Waters. That's right. Deep down in Florida, yes.
Yeah, Muddy Waters. And man, to be honest with you, I'll be honest, bro. The place I was in creating that album, I always think back to how free I was. I was nervous, you know. I'm always
first album, debut album, yeah. But
musically, I was free. I actually I took a shot at it, and I had a lot of conversations with different artists I respect. And I think I had a conversation with Marcus Roberts, and he was just like, "You got to do exactly. You got a chance. You got to do exactly what you are willing to go down to the grave with. Like, you have to not take any chances." And when he did that, man, it freed me. And that's why that record is still one of my, I like that record better than my second record, to be quite honest.
They're both great, man. They're both great. Yeah. But yeah, Jamison nominated. Were you surprised by the Grammy nom?
What? 100%. Yeah. Call my mom. First person I called. Like, Mom.
I guess you'll never believe it. Yeah, man. No, it's an awesome record. I encourage people listening, go check out that record. It's called Jamison. It's streaming, but buy it now. Now is the time to buy the physical albums. Let's support these artists. Yeah, definitely check out Jamison. So Jamison, man, Snarky Puppy, because you've been playing with them a lot lately. Were they on your radar as you were coming up? Did you know about Snarky? Were you like aware of what they were doing? Did you admire them from afar?
Man, that's another long story. It's all about relationships, man. Yeah. Just to kind of circle back around, John Baptiste, that was a relationship that was formed. And we formed a kindred, like a brotherhood. Yeah. And then when I met Michael League, I met him through the band members in the band. And the band members in the band, after I won the Monk competition, they followed the industry, man. You know, some people think Snarky is like, they get this interesting, you know, rapport of being like, but these guys they can play at a high level. Yeah, absolutely. Man. And they all come through the same hoops that we did. So
yeah, they're all University of North Texas guys, music schools, you know, every single one of those guys can play.
Yeah, man. And so that's where the relationship starts, because those guys, they know what was going on inside the scene. And they knew me. And so we started to conversate. Chris Bullock, Maz, I would come around to go see shows. I also knew Robert Sput Seawright, who's the former drummer. Right. And honestly, one of the key pieces of that band, I've known him for years growing up in the gospel tradition. So you got to think there was this merge happening. And then I met, one time Mike came to a show with Cecile. I was touring with Cecile McLaurin, Salvant in Europe. And Snarky was playing as well. And he came to the show, and I was playing like a very straight ahead show. You know, Cecile's music, there's a certain kind of, there's there's an honesty to her music that you have to really understand the history of the concept, especially as a drummer, just technically. So I was playing, Mike came to the show. I went that night, changed clothes, went to the jam session, sat in with the band, hung with everybody, Larnell, who's also the drummer now. Long story short, I got a call to sub in South America for like a week. Actually
Wow.
2 weeks. My birthday, 2016.
Okay.
And the rest was history. Mike kept calling me. Eventually, they made me an official member of the band. I recorded on Family Dinner 2 and Immigrants, which is the new album. I'm playing drums on there. The band became, of course, bigger, like a collective. So there's a lot of people, a lot more people than it was, you know, when they first started. And so now I feel good being a part of that group, man, because these guys are, as an organization, it's amazing.
Yes.
I mean, it's I can't
As
even.
you should, man. And just like you were saying, maybe it's because they're so popular or something, that they're appealing to young audiences, that you're kind of getting the same reaction that I imagine some of the fusion players might have in the 70s. We're like, whoa, hey, what are you doing bringing rock into the mix? What are you doing playing rock festivals like that? But they are turning new, younger audiences, especially, onto jazz. I mean, you've been there. They're playing the festivals. You go down to their festival in Miami Beach, and it looks like a Lollapalooza. It looks like you know, it's young kids jamming out, and that's just how it works.
Yeah, man.
Do you see similarities between what they're doing and maybe like the fusion era?
100%.
Was that ever your bag? Did you get into that?
I did briefly. Yeah, so for me, where I come into fusion at is more like, you know, Dave Weckl era. Like I play Sabian cymbals because of the ozone symbol. The ozone ride or the ozone crash symbol was huge in the early 2000s, late 90s. And so I think about how I got into the music. You know, fusion was 100% a huge Dennis Chambers. That's a part of every young, especially young Afro-American drummer.
Yeah,
it is a part of your thing, because if you check out any of the modern gospel cats, they are all coming from Dennis and Vinny and Dave, Steve. Sorry, I should call their whole names: Dave Weckl, Steve Gadd, Vinny Colaiuta, Dennis Chambers. Is that better for all my? If I got some drummers, y'all know it.
Legend, man, right? And our audience knows too. We got a lot of fusion fans in our audience, so we're right there with you, Jamison.
Yeah. So just being honest, that element, man, coming into Snarky, my playing is always kind of, I've always wanted to be that open kind of book to my approach. I wanted my thing to be a little bit more linear. I wanted to be able to swing when it was time to swing, but also still be able to kind of like be open to what may happen that did not happen 60 years ago. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, and so I've always been that open guy. So Snarky situation, it highlights another part of my heart towards music. And of course, it's different from what I do as a solo artist, but I enjoy it, man. It's a place of freedom, and yeah,
totally. Because they go big too. They'll get into some double drummer stuff, which I imagine must be a blast for a drummer. Or is it kind of like dancing? Like I can't step on the other player's toes, or is that challenging to play in a double drummer outfit like that?
Well, yeah, I'll say this: the percussion is definitely more elaborate than anything you would see. And so it's a lot of strategic approach, and there's a lot of the rehearsals, not very many rehearsals, but there's a lot of thought process that goes into how we play, you know, and people see it. And the most difficult part about it is not learning the music. It's being able to creatively improvise within the sonic structure of the band. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Having all that sound coming at you and still being able to freely play with expression and not get in the way. Yeah. That's not necessarily the most easiest thing to do. And so that's what makes that band great.
Totally. And it's one of those bands, the albums are great, obviously, but seeing this group live is like something else, because they really put on amazing production, and just the level of communication on stage is unbelievable.
Yes.
So Jamison, man, like I said, we're all here, we're locked down, but musicians are still making music, they're still being creative. Is there anything in the works that we may have to look forward to, Jamison Ross wise?
Well, I'll be honest. I had a few projects that were going to happen, and to be honest with you, man, COVID-19 has not been the friendliest when it comes to progressive ideas. Yeah. And so right now, to be honest, bro, I'm enjoying family. I'm enjoying my wife and kids. I'm enjoying my brother, my mom. I'm going to see my in-laws. I have already started working on a new album, so that process never stops. But I'll just be honest, bro. This has been a time for me to realize what life is really about, and kind of to rear my inspiration for the years to come. And so I can't talk about, any new projects that will come, your way that are like hot on the press. But of course, man, I'm always creatively writing and developing for something new. So I hope everything is all right.
And just like you said, sometimes these moments of being home, being with family, you know, reflecting, meditating on things, that's what leads to big ideas later. So
yeah, and that's how it always has happened for me too. That's why this is exactly why I lean in this direction, because for me, I don't ever want to force it. I don't want to start getting to the comparison, the whole thing of watching and following and kind of like not being inspired by what I create. And so in my experience, I try to like the higher you go, the harder it gets.
Yeah.
The more touring you do, the more people you get in front of, the harder it gets to stay focused on who you are as a musician and let that create. Now, I'm not saying don't grow, but let that thing flow out of you in a creative way. And so I'm trying to stay close to that as I can. And it's hard. It's not different. It's not like easy. And I think all of my creatives know that it's not easy at all, you know, but you just keep trying and you keeping reality of who you are and what you want to achieve in front of you.
Totally, man. And that's one thing I love about your albums is they're so personal. It sounds like Jamison. This is a musical diary. This is you. Again, I encourage everybody watching, go check out Jamison, the debut album, and All for One, where you get into some originals. Man. And really bring in that R&B vibe, really bring in that soul vibe, and just lay it down. The stuff is great. Check out, it was Immigrants you did with Zavi, with Snarky Puppy, and Family Dinner Volume 2 also. Man, people, we know where to find you, man. Jamison, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for helping us kick off the new all live format for Jazz's Last Call.
Man, I appreciate this, man. I'm going to be tuning in to see what other information I can learn from my other fellow.
Hey, we got your friend Jasmine Horn coming on tomorrow.
Bro, listen. I actually played drums on that record, man. So that's
hey. There's another connection. Phenomenal vocalist on Concord Records. Just put out a great album. So she'll be on tomorrow. And Dave Weckl is coming later in the week, man. Yes. Or next week.
Jazziz is not playing games, man.
We got a fan in Jamison Ross, man. And you got a fan in us, brother. This has been absolutely great. I'm going to sign off with the people watching at home, but I'll see you backstage. A pleasure sharing a drink with you for Last Call, Jamison.
Yes, indeed, man. Cheers, bro.
Cheers. See you around, man. So thank you to Jamison for chatting with us today. Go check out his albums, Jamison and All for One. Go and buy them right now. They are amazing. You're not going to regret it. Incredible drummer, incredible vocalist, really, really soul-stirring stuff. Wanted to quickly, before I sign off, just thank our sponsor. That would be Blue Sound. They're an award-winning high-res wireless sound system that lets you listen to music in any and every room in your house. You can control the volume, what song, via a free Blue OS app for your iPhone, smartphone, or tablet, getting the kind of crisp, detailed sound that only an audiophile grade sound system can deliver and that every jazz fan deserves has never been easier. Check out bluesound.com for more info, or check out our website, jazziz.com, where we've put together a Blue Sound buyer's guide. Wanted to also let you know about our current print issue. That would be our summer 2020 issue. It is on sale now. It is on newsstands. It has already been mailed to subscribers. And also, all of the web content from this article has been converted. All the content from this print edition has been converted to web articles and is available on our website, jazziz.com. You will need a digital subscription to access it, but fortunately, we're offering a special subscription rate right now for just 99 cents per month for 3 months. You can unlock unlimited digital access to all the web articles in this edition and previous print editions. Plus, we'll enroll you to receive a complimentary print edition for our next quarterly issue. That would be the fall 2020 issue. It is coming out in September and is all about the art of the album, listening to albums, producing albums, album cover art, collecting albums. I think you're really going to like it. Again, subscribe now, get unlimited digital access. Plus, come September, a brand new print issue in your mailbox. All right, that will do it for me. This has been The Last Call. I'm going to shut down the bar. You don't have to stay here, but you can't go home. No, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I'm Brian Zimmerman. Thanks for watching, everyone. So long.